So the first story that we're going to be getting into is relating to fluoride. And I'm really excited about this one because this is an exclusive story. You're not going to find this anywhere else. This is my latest article with the Last American Vagabond. Newly released records confirm Houston, Texas is the largest U.S. city to stop water fluoridation. And that picture right there is a picture of some Houston officials cleaning out the fluoride. You can kind of even see over here, it says fluorosilicic acid, a hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is also known as fluoride. And they're cleaning out these tanks. This is images that I was able to get from doing open records requests. As I mentioned earlier, I try to push myself and do real journalism that does often involve, having to send in requests to the city, to the government, trying to dig in and find like the true, accurate truth for you guys, and not just the bullshit that is already out there and just repeating to you over and over. I want to find some important information that you might not see elsewhere. So let's go ahead and get into this one. All right, newly released records confirm Houston is the largest U.S. city not to be fluoridated, which is kind of cool. You guys know that I'm originally from Houston, so this was, in my mind, kind of a victory for Houstonians. But it's a little interesting because it didn't come from activism. All that activism I've been doing over the years, all the fighting I've been doing, apparently it wasn't that's not what it took. It took, I don't know, but let's get into this. According to newly obtained emails between Houston officials and a confirmed statement from the Public Works Department, the city of Houston has not added fluoridation chemicals to the water supply since at least 2019. The reason for ending the water fluoridation program is currently unknown. Houstonians are still receiving low levels of naturally occurring fluoride from municipal water systems. And just to make that clear, for those who don't know, fluoride is a naturally occurring element. What they usually add to the water is not a naturally occurring element. It is hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is a byproduct of phosphate mining, aluminum mining, and that's a bit different. But yes, there is fluoride in some natural bodies of water, including in Texas. And so Houstonians are still being exposed to low levels of fluoride, but there is not any fluoridation chemicals being added to the water. So let's get a little deeper into this. Houston actually has about 2.5 million people in the city downtown area, in the actual city limits. With all of the different towns and cities and incorporated areas, you got about 7.5 million people in the greater Houston area. So quite a bit of people are going to have been impacted by this lack of fluoride in the water. And there's never even been a notice of this. As I wrote here, the revelation that Houston has not been getting fluoride for the last 5 years makes it the largest U.S. city to end the practice of water fluoridation. But this has never been discussed publicly. This comes about because of a new batch of emails, which I had released to me and that I've been pouring through the last couple months. I might have mentioned this on some shows that I was working on this. And if you're curious, I link directly to the emails here. You can look up these people. You can see that they're real people. But in one email dated October 16th, 2024, so just a few months back, Joni Sinach, who's the Senior Division Manager of Houston's Drinking Water Regulatory Compliance Program, states, City of Houston maintains the ability to feed fluoride at the surface and groundwater plants. However, due to the presence of naturally occurring levels within the service area, fluoride has not been actively fed into the system in the past 5 years. And this was coming in response to somebody who had reached out to them, like a local official from a different area of Houston who was asking about their fluoride program. And they said, actually, we haven't been added fluoride in 5 years. So as I've been digging through these emails, trying to get more confirmation, I reached out to Miss Joni herself, and we've talked more than a handful of times. But just the other day, I talked to her on the phone, and she said, quote, the best I can tell you is what I've been told is that the last loads of fluoride we received was probably around 2018. That means it may have been added 2018 to 2019, maybe. And she said she was not in her current position until 2021. She said, quote, I don't think it was a formal decision. Now, this gets a little bit convoluted as we go deeper, but that's kind of the first big headline is I've got confirmation from a city official in the Water Regulatory Compliance Program of Houston's Public Works, and her listed in an email back in October 2024 saying that there hadn't been fluoride in the water in at least 5 years. That would place it at October 2019 at minimum. Maybe even, that's about what it seems based on all the research I've done. Again, the interesting thing is the city has never actually acknowledged this. There's no public releases, press conference. There's no local media talking about this. I seem to be the first one to have discovered it. And it's a possibility that the fluoridation program was cut because Houston is like $330 million in debt, and like a lot of big cities. And so when I was running for mayor of Houston years ago, actually, this was one of my rallying cries and saying like, hey, if you want to save the city money, maybe we should stop adding this poison to the water that's costing $1 million a year. And, nobody really wanted to talk about it. The interesting thing is I ran for mayor in 2019 and 2023. And apparently both those times there was no more fluoride being added to the water and nobody said a thing about it. I've been to city council since then, I think October 2024 actually, and there's no fluoride being added to the water. But not a single person said, hey, Derrick, by the way, we appreciate you coming and thanks for your concerns, but actually this is not a big deal anymore because we're not adding fluoride to the water. It's almost as if somebody didn't want there to be a public knowledge that there was no fluoride in the water. I started looking at all the different contracts, procurement contracts, and I found a $5 million contract for hydrofluorosilicic acid ending January 23rd, 2019. So if that contract ends January 2019, the beginning of the year, and this lady claims in this email that there has been fluoride in the last 5 years, which replaced it October 2019, it's likely that once that contract ended in January 2019, there was no more fluoride. But then this is where things get even weirder. I also found another contract which shows that in April 2022, the city of Houston signed a $1.9 million contract with a company called Penco, and they provide fluoride chemicals and all sorts of other things. And during the discussion on the Penco contract, which I found, there's city council videos, former city council member Michael Kubash spoke against the water fluoridation, noting that Houstonians had previously spoken against the practice. He said, quote, "I don't think it's really helping to reduce tooth decay. Nations that don't fluoridate their water have about the same results as the nations that do." And so 2019, one contract ends, no fluoride in the water. And then in 2022, they sign a new contract saying that that's for fluoride, for hydrofluorosilicic acid. That's specifically what it's for. Let's just go ahead and open this up and show you guys on the screen here. So what this means to me, here, we'll go to Penco. You can see right here, item number 41, City Council, Penco for hydrofluorosilicic acid, for Houston Public Works, 3 years with 2-year option, $1.96 million, tagged by Houston council member, was presented. Kubash voting no, the balance voting aye, motion adopted. So in April 2013, they adopt a motion for a contract for fluoride chemicals, but the lady at the city is telling me that there's no fluoride in the water. So this got me really kind of confused and thinking and looking. So despite this $1.9 million 3-year contract, the water quality reports from the city of Houston from 2019, I checked them all the way going back to 2015. And you could clearly see that there was fluoride levels at 0.7, 0.6. And then at about 2019, they start dropping down. And so from 2019 up till 2023, which is the latest one we have, the fluoride levels are consistently lower than the 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is recommended by the CDC. Measurements taken across East, North, and South Houston reveal levels between fluoride between 0 and 0.4 milligrams per liter, which is what they're saying is the naturally present, natural fluoride present in the water. That doesn't mean that that's not causing harm, because fluoride can cause harm even if it's natural or not. We don't know at the very low levels what it does, but I think we could assume it's not good to just be exposed to it all. So this indicates that the fluoride chemicals have not been added to the water supply since 2019, and that it's only present because of this naturally occurring fluoride levels. And here's a little graphic I found in one of the emails. You can see they're measuring fluoride, and this is in milligrams per liter. This is from April 16, 2023, so 2 years ago. And the target, that red line, is the 0.7 milligrams per liter recommended by the CDC. And you can see that when they test it, they're consistently, the highest it was is about 0.5, maybe just over 0.5. 1, 2, 3, 4 times that year, or just around that time when they were testing it. But on average, it's at 0.4, down here looks like maybe close to 0.3. So it's obviously not being added to the water. This makes things even more weird, but it does align with what I was told by the woman at City of Houston, where she said that City of Houston, quote, maintains the ability to feed fluoride at surface and groundwater plants, which means that they might have bought the fluoride in 2022 and then just decided not to add it to the water supply. I also have a feeling that there could be something else going on, because I did file an open records request to the City of Houston asking for all contracts and information related to City of Houston contracts with Penco, the company that they bought the fluoride from in 2022. And right now, the City of Houston is trying to appeal this to the state attorney general and saying that, I shouldn't be able to get access to this information. So it could just be that they're hiding contracts and trade secrets, but something about that isn't right. They haven't added fluoride to the water since at least 2019. That's what the City of Houston's own records show. That's what the emails that I found, including this email saying that the water hasn't been added to the water in 5 years. But then 3 years later, they sign a nearly $2 million contract for fluoride, but none of the levels measuring fluoride have gone up. Now, when we get the 2024 levels, which usually happens by June or July, we'll see what it says. But like I said, from 2019, 2021, 2021, 22, and 23, which is after when they signed the contract, the levels have stayed consistently at 0.3, 0.35, things of that sort. So it's weird. either they just bought the fluoride and they didn't do anything with it, which doesn't make any sense. That's still wasting taxpayer dollars. They bought it and they're waiting to use it later, or somebody's laundering money or something. I don't know. I definitely got my spidey sense going off that something ain't right. Let's go ahead here, show you some more things that I found. So there's a little town, part of Houston that was annexed in 1994 called Kingwood. It's northeast of Houston, and they get their water from the city. And I found one email which includes a presentation with 2 images highlighting the removal of fluoride from Kingwood's tanks in January 2024. This is that image I was showing you earlier. And this is just part of this PowerPoint presentation that they had at the image. Waste transports, Kingwood, fluoride and phosphate removal, January 2024. Shows them loading the tanks into a truck. And then it right here says old fluoride and phosphate from Kingwood A, B, and C removed and tanks cleaned. Chemicals sent to U.S. Ecology in Robstown, Texas for proper disposal. And you can see these guys are wearing hazmat suits as they clean this stuff because it's toxic. So that was interesting. That's another confirmation that they are not adding fluoride in there because they're cleaning it out and getting rid of it. So I don't think they would be adding it to it. And then interestingly, you guys know that I've covered the National Toxicology Program report, the fluoride lawsuit, et cetera. There's been extensive reporting here on this channel at thelastAmericanVagabond.com. And in the emails I found, there's even city officials, like in September 6, 2024, one of the city officials asked another colleague about the judge's ruling in the federal lawsuit and says, quote, what does this mean to us in the long run if EPA reduces the permissible levels or even bans the fluoridation of drinking water? So in the background, while people like me are showing up to city council, the city is talking about this. They're very aware that this lawsuit's going on. Another email shows a resident of Houston speaking to someone, requesting to speak with somebody from the city regarding new, quote, high quality studies. This is just from a concerned Houstonian said, I had a question about water fluoridation process, particularly if it's still necessary now that the EPA released a report of high quality studies indicating that it's harmful to children and actually has no impact on health. I would love to speak to someone on the matter. As far as I could tell, they never spoke to anybody. Nobody ever got back to them, or they sent them the standard statement. Now, there's some more here in this article. If you guys want to learn more, I do encourage you to check it out because I found some interesting Houston history, actually, that Houston started fluoridating in 1980. There was an ordinance that passed. So that was 45 years ago. And that was at 1 part per million, which is definitely higher than what they're recommending now because they've realized over time that it's not helpful and it's bad for you. And I found this article in the Selma Times Journal from May 13th, 1979, discussing this battle going on in Houston, where as they were trying to push for water fluoridation, different Houstonians were upset and were trying to like say, no, we don't want to do that. And so the city of Houston actually organized a 3-panel committee, including professors from University of Houston, Rice University, TSU. And the article says the committee reported that it found several possible adverse effects of fluoridated water. These adverse effects included skeletal fluorosis, fluoride allergies, difficulties for individuals suffering from kidney disease, and a reference to an increase in the growth of cancer cells in animals. And eventually, the city did pass this ordinance starting to fluoridate in 1980, and this led to a lawsuit from this group called Safe Water Foundation of Texas, which they eventually lost. But I did find those court records and everything like that. And it's just interesting to me because this is like, Houston's my hometown and Houston's been fluoride free for 5 years. I've been fighting for that since 2012 at least. And apparently it just happened all on its own. Here's the article I was talking about in the Selma Times. Let me go ahead and see if I can show you guys this one. No, it's not showing me the clip. Well, this is the article. I'll share it. I'll link it to you guys later if you want to see it. But it's just interesting to me because this is, like I said, my hometown, something I've been fighting for. We're going to talk in a moment about the national issues of fluoride. And yeah, Houston is now the largest city in the United States not to have fluoride in the water. And it didn't happen necessarily through activism. It kind of just happened. I don't know. We don't really know the full reasons, but I will definitely stay on this. So please share this article. You can find it at The Last American Vagabond. You can also find it at derrickbroze.substack.com. Now let's talk about fluoride on the national level for a moment. Couple of things here. You guys may remember that I mentioned at the end of the Biden administration, Joe Biden's administration announced that they were going to appeal the federal court ruling, which came out last year. You guys remember I was in San Francisco in February and March of last year for 2 weeks reporting on the federal lawsuit. We waited all year for something to happen. And come September, they finally ruled, and the judge ruled in favor of the Fluoride Action Network, saying that the EPA must act because fluoride poses an unreasonable risk, and we need to know more. And we were just like, okay, cool. That's awesome. What's going to happen? Are they going to appeal it? And at the last minute, the Biden administration did indeed appeal it. And then, of course, Biden's gone. Now Trump's in office and, Maha, RFK, all this kind of stuff. The question has been, are they going to appeal it too? Or are they going to say, you know what? We're going to overturn this EPA appeal and we're going to listen to the court and we're going to, start making some rules about fluoride, which obviously the most common sense thing to do is just to ban it outright. So now we have an update on that situation here. This is coming from Bloomberg Law. EPA allowed extra month to craft path forward on fluoride appeal. So the EPA under Donald Trump, they asked for an additional month to decide if they're going to appeal because their deadline to appeal was going to be this Friday, tomorrow. They were supposed to file if they were going to, go ahead and appeal. But a federal appeals court has given the EPA until mid-May now to file its opening brief, appealing a district court's ruling that fluoride in drinking water is so risky the agency must address health concerns in some way. This extension request was filed on Tuesday, which, as we're going to show in a moment, came right after the EPA was making some other big moves about fluoride. So it's kind of weird. On one hand, they're making announcements saying that they're going to start studying all the fluoride stuff again. They're going to look at everything they can, but then they're also asking for an extra 30 days to decide how they're going to handle this appeal. In reality, if Trump and Maha and RFK and everybody were really about getting to the bottom of fluoride, then just end the appeal and just follow the court's ruling. So we're going to have to see what happens. But now the can has been kicked down a little bit further to May 12th. And we're going to hear from Michael Connett, the lead attorney who fought the federal lawsuit since 2017 and was successful in that, in just a moment to get his thoughts on that. But a couple more things here. This is one you might have seen going around. At the CDC, Trump's administration job cuts wipe out a wide array of specialists. Now, I'm not going to really cry about the CDC, losing some jobs. This is part of the whole effort to shrink the government. Some good, some bad. Some of the good I'll tell you about here is this: the oral health division. One CDC employee told Stat that their entire branch of HIV prevention has been eliminated. Well, whether or not you believe HIV is real, that's good or bad thing. Another in the CDC's oral health division said virtually every employee has been eliminated. The oral health department promoted fluoride in water, which Trump and Kennedy have planned to ban nationally, allegedly. That is a good thing, my friends. The oral health division being kind of eliminated altogether, because let me go here now. Let me show you real quick at thelastamericanvagabond.com. If you go there and you find all of my articles about fluoride, especially if you followed during the fluoride lawsuit, you guys know that, like, for example, if you don't know this reporting, you need to go back and look at it because I did a lot of good reporting and you need to know about it. But there was emails that were released during the fluoride lawsuit, and I called them the fluoride emails. There was a lot of details that were released specifically showing that scientists from the CDC's oral health division, these are all my articles, 5 pages since 2020 of articles I've been writing for TLAB. You can go through there and look up the fluoride emails. I encourage you to check that out, because what we found out is that the fluoride, the oral health division at the CDC, not only do they have an extensive connection with the American Dental Association, which is one of the biggest lobbyist groups for water fluoridation, they also were in these emails listed as trying to slow down the National Toxicology Program, trying to prevent these scientists from reaching their conclusions, which showed that fluoride is indeed a neurotoxin and is lowering IQ in children. So I think that's a good move. If RFK and them want to get rid of the oral health division, I'm not going to cry about that. I can't speak to all the other changes that were made. Now, here's another one. On Monday, RFK, he's in Salt Lake City for a press conference because Utah has just banned fluoride. And he was there with Lee Zeldin, who's the head of the EPA right now. And the EPA announced they will, quote, expeditiously review new science on fluoride in drinking water. So again, generally, this is a good move. He says, quote, without prejudging any outcomes, when this evaluation is completed, we will have an updated foundational scientific evaluation that will inform the agency's future steps to meet statutory obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act. And he talks about how Kennedy's been in front of this issue. They mentioned the National Toxicology Program, which found moderate confidence that fluoride is lowering IQ in children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So this seems to be generally a good move. And as you can see, I tweeted here when it came out. I showed the press conference with RFK and Lee Zeldin in Utah. I said, this is a good move. But look what Michael Connett says back to this. Again, Michael Connett's the lawyer who fought the lawsuit. I'm very wary of EPA's announcement. Zeldin never mentioned that EPA is already under a court order to take regulatory action to address fluoride's unreasonable risk to human health. Under the court order, EPA must initiate rulemaking proceedings under the Toxic Substance Control Act to issue a rule that will eliminate risk. And he goes on from there. This is, again, when the deadline was on Friday. And he said, if the EPA does file the appeal, as it looks they will, this will likely say more about the EPA's true intentions with fluoride than a commitment to do another review, especially since the EPA's reviews of fluoride literature in the past have been atrocious. And I think that's, it's like on one hand, I'm saying, hey, this is generally a good move. Michael's like, hey, maybe not so fast. If they were really making a good move, they would just listen to the court, as I was saying a moment ago. But let's go ahead actually and hear from Michael right now. Michael, I've interviewed him on this channel a couple of times when I was at the fluoride lawsuit and then last year for some updates. But he sent me a special video exclusively for us here at The Conscious Resistance, a little 5-minute clip of him discussing all the latest fluoride updates and why he's skeptical about this EPA announcement. So check this out.
Monday, Robert Kennedy, the Secretary of the HHS, announced that he will be instructing the CDC to stop promoting water fluoridation. That's a very significant development because the CDC is by far the most aggressive proponent of water fluoridation in the United States at the governmental level, and many communities across the country are fluoridating their water based on the CDC's recommendation. So that was a really positive development. There was another announcement on Monday in tandem with Mr. Kennedy's announcement. That was from the EPA. Lee Zeldin, the administrator of EPA, announced that the agency will be conducting, quote, an expeditious review of the new science on fluoride's dangers. And some cheered that news and welcomed it. But I am more skeptical and concerned about it. And here's why. We don't need the EPA to do another review right now. What we need the EPA to do is follow the court's order from last year, where the court ordered the EPA to implement a rulemaking proceeding to eliminate the unreasonable risk posed by adding fluoridation chemicals to drinking water. The federal court found that water fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk to the brain in the form of reduced IQ in children. And based on that finding, the court ordered the EPA to take regulatory action. The court didn't ask EPA to do another review of the science. The court ordered the EPA to take action. So that's what we need from the EPA now, is action, not another review, particularly in the context of EPA's previous reviews on fluoride, which have consistently been, to put it mildly, inadequate and superficial. So I am concerned that the EPA is taking the approach of, let's do another review, kick the can down the road a little bit, make it seem like we're doing something, but in reality they may have a preordained conclusion that will not result in changing current water fluoridation practices in the United States. So what I really wanted to see happen on Monday is Zeldin announced that the EPA is standing down on its appeal of the court order, because the EPA announced in January, before the new administration came into office, the EPA announced that it would be appealing the court's order, which will take a year to 2 years to complete. So it was a significant delay in taking action. And so what we've been looking for with the new administration is for the EPA to say, we're not going to appeal the court's order and we're going to begin the rulemaking proceeding. That's what I've been looking for. And we didn't get that on Monday. All we got was a commitment to do a, quote, expeditious review. Now, one other development is yesterday, so on Tuesday, just a day after Zeldin announced that EPA will be doing this new review, EPA requested an extension of time to file their appeal of the court's order. Under the existing deadline EPA needed to file its appeal this Friday, April 11th, and EPA asked for an extension, which the Ninth Circuit quickly granted. So now EPA has until May 12th to file its appeal. Now, my hope is that this extension that EPA has been granted will give the agency time to regroup and come up with a coordinated approach to the fluoride issue and stand down on the appeal and use this time to basically come up with an agency position that says we're not going to appeal the court order, we're going to move into a rulemaking proceeding, and we're going to protect the American public from this risk in their water supply. That's what we need. We need the EPA to take action in the form of a nationwide ban on water fluoridation. From sea to sea, no more water fluoridation. We need to follow the path of Western Europe, which has already, or actually all of Europe, which has by and large already rejected water fluoridation. We need to follow Europe's lead. EPA has the authority to do it. It needs to act now. We don't need another review. So that's the latest developments from this week.
Yeah, that's the latest on fluoride. Fluoride is no longer in Houston's water. The EPA is claiming they're going to do a review, while at the same time they're asking for more time to review this appeal instead of acting on the court orders. And so we'll keep you guys updated to see what happens and as these developments come in.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.